Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. Here's your flash briefing for the week of December 4th. City Council will meet for a regular session Tuesday night at 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. If you can't watch, quickly catch up on City Council meetings by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityofls.net. You can pay your Jackson County property, business, and real estate taxes at Treasury in the lobby of City Hall. Payments received at Treasury can be in the form of cash, check, or card. If you pay at City Hall, Lee Summit benefits are receiving 1% of all tax dollars collected. Treasury is open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Learn more, including extended hours, at cityofls.net. And visit the Lee Summit Farmers Market Annual Holiday Mart in the lobby of City Hall this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Shop the best local goods from amazing market vendors. The first 100 customers will receive a free Farmers Market tote bag. Learn more at downtownls.org. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
I'm Assistant Chief Jim Eden.
And I'm Battalion Chief Ben Hicks.
And today we're at Lee Summit Fire Station 3. Fire Station 3 was part of the 2016 no tax increase general obligation bond for public safety initiatives. The station was built and occupied in August of 2020. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we've not been able to give tours or have an actual ribbon cutting. So we want to invite you in today to give you the opportunity to see what goes on within a Lee Summit Fire Department station.
Let's go take a tour. This is our admin side of the facility. We use this side mainly for offices. We have a lot of work during the day, whether it's training or doing reports or just generally taking care of the shift that we need to do. At this particular station, Station 3, we do have an assistant chief that works out of here. That person has their own office where they need to manage what's going on throughout the day with the shift and staffing, and as well as running calls out of here. The captain has their own office as well. What the captain does is at this specific station is in charge of both the fire truck that's here as well as the ambulance. And so with all those personnel responsibilities as well as running calls and reports, that's where they work out of. And generally for the rest of the crew, which is somewhere around 5 to 6 individuals, we have rooms to write reports, and we have additional training rooms and other rooms where people can work. Walking into our living area, I think it's important to recognize that we work 48-hour shifts. So in the evenings, after 5 o'clock, after work is done, we may have the opportunity to catch a game or something else as long as we're not running calls. And this gives us the opportunity to do that. When we go into our kitchen, I think this gives you a great reason to know why we go to the grocery store. When you see fire trucks at the grocery store, what we're doing. Well, so for 2 days working for 48 hours, we buy all our meals at the grocery store, and then we come in here and cook, just like you guys do at home. So everybody has their own fridge on each shift as well as their own pantry, and then we cook those meals here. Going into the sleeping side of things, we've got a couple different things that are significant. We have our own laundry room, which again is important when we're here for 48 hours. The opportunity to wash and clean our clothes and bedding is very important for hygiene. And walking into where our beds are, we keep the kind of sleeping quarters over on one side of the building. It gives us both easy access out to where our fire apparatus are, as well as kind of keeping it a little bit quieter for those people that have been up all night running calls. We have 11 bedrooms here at this station. And the reason we built it with so many bedrooms is we want to give ourselves as a city the opportunity to expand. So if we need to put another apparatus here or numerous other people working at this station, that's already in place as far as infrastructure goes, and we don't need to go back and try to make it bigger or better. And that's really important for us, especially because the old station was so small. Back out on the apparatus floor, we have doors facilitated as many places as possible, so that way when we're sleeping at night and a call comes out, we can make our way out fairly quickly to get out onto the truck if we need to and run a call. On the other side of the station, we kind of have other stuff that we may want to keep separated if we want to. Physical fitness is very important to us as firefighters. So in order to better ourselves and make sure we're as healthy as we can to do this job, we have our own gym facility here that we kind of go throughout the day when we can and get an opportunity to come in and work out. Our goal when we run calls, when we get back to the station after calls, our goal is to get ready to go back as soon as we can to run another call. So we have the opportunity or capability here to fill up our air tanks. So you see firefighters wear the big air tanks on their backs as we can be running calls throughout the city. Cancer prevention is very important in the fire service right now. Because of that, we have an extractor machine, and what this does is gives us the capability when we come back from a fire, we can put our bunker gear into this machine and get all that really nasty crud off of our gear. Again, kind of getting back to that cancer prevention mode, allowing us to be as clean as we possibly can for the next call. And finally is our bunker gear room. We each have our own individual locker. This gives us the opportunity to store our gear when we're not here working in between shifts, as well as keep a clean extra set on here in case we do run a fire and we need to clean our current gear. Typically, this is where your day starts off at the fire station. You come in and get your gear and put it on wherever you're working that day, and then you end the same way, bring your stuff back to your locker to go home after working. This is Med 3. This ambulance just currently moved into the station from Station 7. Station 3, since we've had it built, has turned into one of our busiest stations in the city. Therefore, we wanted to provide the best care in the closest unit as we could. So we moved one of our ambulances up, and this became Med 3 for this particular instance. Out of this station, we also have Pumper 3. And that's a fire apparatus that they utilize to run the calls on this west end of the city. The last vehicle that you see is the chief's vehicle. We have 2 shift chiefs on shift every day, and they split the city. And this chief running out of this station typically covers the west and south area of the city, while our chief of Station 2 covers kind of that northeast section of our city, and they divide it up evenly.
Thank you for going on a tour with us today. If you have any other questions about the Lee Summit Fire Department, please go to our webpage at lsfire.net or follow us on Facebook at Lee Summit Fire Department.
Thanks for joining us on the tour.
It's member level. Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation, Ryan. Thank you. Is there any indicator that shows, are we supporting a need?
You know, they talk about like gym rats, kids that grew up with their dads that were coaches. Like I was a city hall rat. My dad, Tom Lovell, was hired as the Parks Administrator in 1978 and spent 40 years in public service here in Lee Summit. I would go up on the weekends when he was working, and I'd run around and play and do things, and I didn't know what he was doing at the time, but I just knew that was part of our weekend routine some days, was to go up and hang out at City Hall. Being part of a city from a young age to now in my adult life, you reap so many benefits from that. The people you know, you care more for something that you've been a part of. My wife and I knew we wanted to raise a family. Just trying to find a community that we thought we could raise our children in, that was good to me. And it just felt like the right move as we were deciding on a city to come back to. Fortunate to have started a business in 2018. I founded Level Insurance Group, and we are a business insurance brokerage. So we help businesses procure insurance. Decided to throw our flag in the ground here in Lee Summit, and it's grown. I also have this passion for learning and curiosity, and I started a podcast series. So I really enjoy this opportunity where I sit down with business owners and tell their story. And get this out to other people in hopes that maybe it betters their life and gives them some inspiration or something. It's going to be a really exciting time, and obviously this city's in my blood. My dad's been a part of it for a long time, so I'm really excited. Thank you all. A lot of people would say I was crazy, right? So why do you throw your hand up and subject yourself to going into city politics? I think, especially as I've gotten older, I just felt, maybe a civic duty, like a responsibility to say, hey, this city's been great to me. Here's a way that I can give back and take some of my skills and put them to work for the people of this city. I wanted to bring a different, maybe way of thinking and take some of my business acumen and see areas that it may apply to how we develop and grow this community, and just give a different perspective. One of our biggest challenges, but also one of our biggest opportunities, is how do we develop and grow this community? We don't want to grow too fast, but we want to grow at a pace that helps support, who and what we are as a community. So, we've got a lot of opportunities, whether that be through development or parks. We've got a lot of land coming on board. So I just think it's important, it's a challenge, but it's also our greatest opportunity. And so we just got to be smart how we do that. It's just asking some different questions. I'm one that, I'm not contrarian for contrarian's sake. What I am is someone will tell me something, and then I want to get to that position with them by just asking thoughtful questions along the way. And then if I can get there, then I feel like we've answered everything we can to move that forward, versus, hey, here's kind of how we've done it. I'm never this is how we do it, this is how we've always done it, and this is how we'll continue to do it. Office of Council Member for District 2. All of my practical experience has put me in this position to serve, and I just raised my hand and said I want to do that. For which I was elected on April 5th, 2022. I feel this obligation to carry this legacy that my dad did, my family did, and then giving my kids an environment to grow up in that makes them want to come back. My kids have started rec sports through the Parks and Recreation system, and I'm watching them play soccer on this sport field that my dad helped develop, and my dad's sitting there with me, right? I mean, that's the stuff that really matters in life.
Would you please rise for the invocation and stay standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Father, we gather here today to seek your guidance and blessings as the City Council comes together to make decisions for the well-being of our community. Grant us wisdom, compassion, and understanding as we navigate the challenges before us. May our decisions be fair, reflecting the diverse needs of our community. We ask for strength and unity among council members, fostering an environment of collaboration for the greater good. Bless this meeting with a spirit of cooperation and a shared commitment to the betterment of our city. May your guidance be present in every discussion and every decision made here today. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States.
All right, welcome again, everyone. I'm calling to order the City of Lee Summit regular session number 57. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Hodges.
Here.
Councilmember Damaro.
Here.
Councilmember Felker.
Here.
Councilmember Lovell. Councilmember Pryor.
Here.
Councilmember Shields.
Here.
Councilmember Edson. Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Here.
Mayor Baird.
Here. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I have a motion to adopt the agenda by Councilmember DeMoro, seconded by Councilmember Felker. I'm going to use this moment to say that I will be recusing on agenda item 9A, I believe. Yep, 9A. It's a potential conflict that could be down the line on that one, so it's just a funding agreement. Councilmember Felker.
Thank you, Mayor, and likewise 10A, I will be recusing.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 7-0. Thank you all. Next is the approval of the consent agenda. I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Lopez. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It also passes unanimously. Thank you. That takes us to council roundtable, items of general interest. Discussion? Yes, Councilmember Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. Downtown continues to be bustling. We have the Holiday Mart and 12 Bars of Christmas this weekend. I will not be attending either of those because it is also my son's first birthday this weekend.
Oh, my goodness.
But I hope everybody else does.
Like yesterday. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to highlight that I was fortunate to be a pinch hitter on your behalf, along with our council reps, to participate in the Troop A Highway Patrol groundbreaking event that happened last week. And just the comments, the conversations we had with some of their leadership and the patrolmen that came in town to visit, to be part of that ceremony, and just having conversations with some of those individuals, just as I said that day, was just a culmination of the positive comments they had towards our city and our leadership from our staff, and this council support was just a really cool feeling for to be acknowledged in that manner. And I didn't know a fact that one of their higher patrolmen mentioned to me was the State Highway Patrol has been in our city since 1938, which kind of puts it in perspective. And they're very, very happy and pleased to stay within our city boundaries, our city limits, and are excited for their new facility. So I just want to kind of highlight that, and again, commend our staff, Mr. Bushek and all his hard work, and our city manager. So thank you all.
Thank you. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. So I really don't have anything as profound as that, but
I wanted to show my cup that I got for my birthday. You guys can buy these at the Lee Summit store for anyone that can't think of like someone with what to get them for Christmas. It's a really cool cup. It's a Stanley knockoff, not a real Stanley. But, and then also it was really cool to go to the Highway Patrol groundbreaking because my husband's grandpa was second in command for the Highway Patrol until he retired. So I don't know what it's called, but second in command. So it was cool to be able to be there. All right, thanks.
Yeah, I was sad to miss it. All right, excellent. Well, we have a proclamation that's overdue, so would you ladies meet me up front? Really up front. All right, is this working? Good. Okay, we have a proclamation, and then I'll let you introduce yourselves after that. Whereas Mantles and Martinis was created in 2012 to honor the life of Kyle Zamar, a vibrant 22-year-old man full of potential who died unexpectedly in 2006 of myocarditis. And whereas Kyle, being an accomplished athlete, broadcaster, and leader, was destined for a career in one of those fields. However, after a summer job working with special needs children, Kyle found his true calling to become a special needs teacher and coach. And wanting to honor the memory and amazing life of her oldest son, Susie Zamar Gale, and Austin Zamar, Kyle's younger brother, started Kyle's Gift, a 501c3 organization that provides financial resources to benefit special needs children and adults. Whereas Mantles and Martinis evolved to serve as the annual fundraiser for Kyle's Gift and has it designated the first Thursday of every December as their annual fundraising event. Creative volunteers open their homes to showcase their festive holiday decorations while serving delectable martinis and delicious appetizers to encourage patrons to participate in the silent auction and purchase raffle tickets to raise funds for Kyle's Gift. And my wife participates as much as she can every year, volunteering and more. Whereas since its inception, Kyle's Gift has gifted over $300,000 for programs serving the social, emotional, physical, and educational needs of special needs children and adults. And whereas 2023 Mantle and Martinis will take place on December 7th from 5:30 to 8. That's 5:30. Oh, 5 to 8:30. Winterset neighborhood of Lee Summit. By virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Lee Summit, I do hereby proclaim December 7th as Mantles and Martinis Day. You are Susie Zamar Gale.
Yes. I'm Susie Gale, and this is Patsy Brandt and Barb Noble, a couple of the members of the Dream Team that put this together every year. We're very grateful and honored, and thank you for the proclamation. We're very after Thursday night, we will have raised close to $500,000. And because we're completely a volunteer organization and we're not afraid to ask for anything and everything, almost every penny of that goes directly to programs for special needs children and adults in Western Missouri. Organizations like Special Olympics and Camp Encourage, which is a wonderful sleepaway camp for autistic kids, Developing Potential right here in Lee Summit. Down Syndrome Innovations, so we've been able, this year we gave out 8 grants, and those people accept fake big checks tomorrow or Thursday night. So we're very, very grateful to the community for being support, and I am so grateful to my that make this magical evening happen. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything? Okay. I knew a Patsy Brandt when I went to K-State, Kansas State. And you were a counselor? Yes, that's right. Yep. Yeah, we'll have to catch up. Yep. That was in 1989 and 90, 91. Yep. You were my counselor. Yep. That's all right. I was skinnier then.
Well, I was younger.
I remember you being taller. I thought you were taller.
Really?
Yeah.
I was younger.
Yeah, you were amazing. You were the best counselor I ever had, I swear. And not just saying that. I looked you up before the meeting to see if I could figure out if you were the same one, and your LinkedIn doesn't say that kind of thing.
No, I haven't worked.
Yeah. You won't forget me after I tell you what we talked about. I remember our final conversation, too. It was really interesting. Take care. All right. Public hearings. Wow. Yes, Mayor Tim. Okay. I'm going to close the regular session, open the public hearing in the matter of agenda item 5A. This is a Unified Development Ordinance Amendment to Article 6, Use Standards pertaining to accessory uses and structures and requirements for accessory dwelling units, and Article 15, Rules of Interpretation and Definitions. City of Lee Summit is the applicant. Would all those wishing to speak to this matter please rise and be sworn in by the city clerk? All right, thank you. Miss Amy's coming forward.
Good evening. Ready for me?
Yes, please.
Great. Amy Nassif, Deputy Director of Development. Want to enter into the exhibit list, Exhibit A, list of exhibits 1 through 15.
Please enter into the record Exhibit A, list of exhibits 1 through 15.
Great, thank you. So here tonight to talk about some ordinance updates for accessory structures and accessory uses. And these are kind of broken down into 4 main areas, most of which are going to be in Article 6, but and many dealing with accessory dwelling units, but we have other areas dealing with other accessory uses too, and some cleanup, and also with our definitions. And the reason that this all got started and we were working on this, of course, is to advance our goals of the the comprehensive plan, our IGNITE plan, for our strong neighborhoods and housing choice options. And that one specifically dealing with housing access and affordability and creating more housing diversity across our community. And with our strong neighborhoods and housing choice, we have implementation dashboards throughout our comprehensive plan. So the goal with this one to maintain the thriving quality neighborhoods, the connected diversity of residents, and the objective there with increasing the mix of affordable housing. And the action item specifically for tonight that was created there was to create UDO regulations to allow for ADUs as an option for housing and for rental income. So that's how we started our journey here. We've been working with the Community and Economic Development Committee for a while now, since February 2022, done some really great work with them and great conversations and discussion. And also in March 2023, did do a citizen survey. And I'll get into the details on that survey and what those results were also for you. The research and discussion that we had with CEDC and what developed the UDO ordinance proposals for tonight broke down into kind of 6 areas to help us navigate this evening's discussions. First, we'll talk about existing requirements, because ADUs are allowed currently today in our code. We'll talk a little bit about the other minor updates that we had to make as well, and then get into what our existing development conditions are, results, just overview of our citizen survey. We had a lot of discussion all around Old Downtown Lee Summit, so we'll talk about that a little bit, comparison with other communities, and then get into our recommendations for you all. So this is just a list of our minor updates or housekeeping items that we did. Full descriptions in the packets for you all, but just some clarification on different accessory uses, improving some clarity in areas, removing some tables that had to go into some other sections, and then adding some definitions. And the bulk of the work really getting into the accessory dwelling units. So in our comprehensive plan, accessory dwelling unit is discussed and talked about as a smaller independent residential dwelling located on the same lot as a standalone single-family home. And the below illustration are just some examples of where and how an ADU might be found on a single-family lot. The ADU itself is the caption portion in yellow there. And one of the great things with the accessory dwelling units and updating our regulations and our requirements that we have is it does increase affordable housing options, provides for multi-generational housing opportunities. Our updated regulations really help to preserve and protect our existing neighborhoods and residential structures, and also from our research found can increase property values as well. Just some examples and photos that we had shared. None of these are local. These are just examples of detached or attached accessory dwelling units you may find. So where are we today? So right now, currently, we do allow accessory dwelling units. It is in a variety of chapters of our code under a variety of different names and terminology. So that it makes it really confusing and difficult for the general public when they're trying to find those regulations, and internally as well. Also, we currently really don't have a limit on the number of ADUs per lot. The only where we find that is in our agriculture zoning district, and that actually can allow 4 ADUs. We don't have any existing architecture requirements. We don't really have any restrictions or conditions on size or the maximum height either. So that was one area that we really wanted to focus on and help clean up and strengthen. So around this time, we were also researching and doing that work. We did have a citizen survey go out. We did a second push at the end of March as well, and we had almost 600 responses. This is just a summary of some of the results that we received. Overwhelmingly, a lot of support for inclusion and continuing to include ADUs in our code, and also 60% responded ADUs should be permitted by right, and over 70% responded that ADUs should look similar to the primary or principal structure on the home. Give you a moment with those. So when we received those survey results, one of the other things that we did, we also focused our attention on Old Downtown Lee Summit. And currently in our code today, attached ADUs above garages are permitted on lots of 15,000 square foot or more, but there is no design criteria that exists. And currently ADUs can be used as short-term rentals. Some of the questions and that also came out of our discussion with CEDC was kind of what is the makeup of Old Downtown Lee Summit. And so we did some research there, and our senior planner, Shannon McGuire, did a fabulous job pulling some data for us. As you can see, our average residential lot size is actually about just under 15,000 square foot in size. And residential lots themselves range anywhere from 2,500 square foot to a couple really large ones of 3.7 acres. We also, on the right-hand side here, that Exhibit C is something that Mr. McGuire made for us as well, which just shows it's the average lot size in Old Downtown and just what an ADU structure, the massing of it, would look like. And as you can see, as compared with a detached garage, there's not a huge difference with it. So then how do we compare and how do we look with our neighbors in other communities? So when we looked at Blue Springs, Overland Park, and Olathe, most all communities, and also nationally as well, but locally, most of the communities do have a regulation and restrict the number of ADUs on a single lot. They do have regulations for development and design criteria and standards too, and talk about setbacks and lot size, or excuse me, the size of the ADU itself. All some things that we currently just did not have in our code. So let me skip over this. So our recommendations then are to update those, of course. So when discussing those updates, I'm going to walk you through kind of the 6 main areas of those updates that we have for you. And this is going to be on the screen, the red line versions for you. So the first thing we did was wanted to include what the purpose and intent of an ADU is, and to put it all under one section of our code. As I mentioned earlier, it's in currently several different portions and chapters of our UDO, so this helps the readability to just make everything under one section to find the information that you need, and also establish that only one ADU be permitted on a lot. So where can these be found? Currently, they are permitted within Old Downtown Lee Summit, so that would still remain the same. And some of the recommendations that also came out of the CEDC was that properties half acre in size or larger that have the zoning that you see on the screen, that those could also qualify for an ADU. And then any other property, if you're smaller than that or you're not in Old Downtown, you could make the ask, but it would have to come through the preliminary development plan process, which would be public hearing, going through Planning Commission, and then ultimately to you all for final review and decision. And this then clarifies here, we added language just to clarify where an ADU can be on that lot, that it can be attached or detached, also within the single-family dwelling, or you can do a conversion of, say, a garage. And something that we found also that's usually pretty helpful is to have illustrations where you can. So again, we developed these with our friends in Creative Services to include these illustrations in the UDO updates as well, which shows those different options. And then getting into the development requirements themselves, still have established setbacks that the ADU itself should be set back from the principal single-family home. All other zoning district setbacks, of course, would still apply. You can do a conversion of a garage, provided that parking is provided elsewhere on the lot, and that the ADU itself needs to provide one additional off-street parking space. Additional development criteria with the structure size and lot coverage, we would be introducing also a maximum size for an ADU that it should not exceed 1,000 square foot in size, or 50% of the principal structure's floor area, whichever is less. That's pretty standard across the board from other municipalities and jurisdictions that we found, and what's also been recommended. But now if you are in Old Downtown Lee Summit, it would be a little bit smaller, so still allowed an ADU if you're less than 15,000 square feet in size, but then the ADU could not exceed 500 square feet, or more than 50%. Just because of the nature of how small that lot itself may be. And you still would not be able to cause any total impervious lot coverage over the 60%, which is our standard requirement. Cannot have more than 2 bedrooms. And then another really important addition is the height of the ADU itself should not exceed the height of the principal structure. That way you don't have an accessory structure overwhelming the principal structure itself. Design criteria. Felt it was important to help protect and preserve existing neighborhoods and lots, that we'd add language that the architecture style should be compatible with the existing neighborhood and the principal single-family structure on the lot. And then permitting and occupancy. We have added additional language too, that ongoing owner occupancy of the primary dwelling or the ADU is required. That way the property owner is always, living on that parcel. You also, the primary and accessory dwelling unit themselves need to remain under single ownership. So the idea is you don't have an ADU and then you start lot splitting or anything and selling it off. It needs to remain under single ownership, and must of course meet all building and fire code requirements just as it is today. And then the addition of that short-term rentals would not be permitted within an ADU. And then to help cross-reference that, we did also recommend an update to the short-term rentals chapter, but the only reason that is just to, again, cross-reference that short-term rentals not be allowed as an ADU. Just that way, depending on the general public, what section they're looking on the code, that they're aware of this requirement. And then lastly, added a definition to our definitions chapter under dwelling in our, under our definitions chapter of Article 15. So then kind of circling back around, where does that leave us then to today, what that would look like? So with the proposed recommendations from, again, Planning Commission 2 and CEDC, this is how we would then compare. We would be very similar then and have the same and similar recommendations, or excuse me, language for the maximum number of ADUs on a lot, the districts that are allowed. There'd be a height requirement that you can't exceed the principal, very similar to others, the ADU size and setbacks established along with the architecture. Only thing that'd be a little bit different still from our neighbors is that we would have a minimum lot size requirement with ours as well. Again, this was our UDO process that we went through for the past year and a half, working through that. And the one additional item that came out of Planning Commission is that we did want to clarify where the required parking standards are found. So we had recommended also a change to Article 6, Division 4, just to add the caveat language of parking standards found in Article 8. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, questions? Councilmember Shields.
Mayor, I had a question about the parking requirement. So right now, if you have a single-family residence, you need, is it 2 covered spaces, like a garage, basically? So the additional off-street parking space, could that be a driveway space in front of the garage? And still, like if you have a house that has 2-car garage and two car spaces in front of the garage, would that meet the requirements?
So that's a great question. So right now, you are required in certain residential districts to have 2 enclosed parking spaces. So if you want to have an ADU, you don't need to have 3. You just need to maintain that you still have the 2 parking spaces enclosed. You need to have an additional parking space for your ADU, but that additional one does not have a requirement to be enclosed.
It could just be in front of the garage.
Yes, yes. And then in our single-family plan districts, it's only one enclosed parking spot is required.
But again, that a driveway space.
And then the other one can be.
They don't need to build another garage or build another driveway if
Yes.
that's how it's set up.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you. Just to piggyback off of Councilmember Shields, so they don't need to build an additional parking place if they're building an ADU, or they do need to?
They need to provide additional parking. That can be in the driveway, or it can be on their property. It does not have to be enclosed.
So not enclosed, but, so if there's already a driveway in place in front of a house, they can utilize that driveway and consider that a parking spot for the ADU?
They can.
They don't have to add additional parking with an ADU?
No, as long as the parking can fit on that driveway, they do not have to add.
Okay, and I didn't see, so my big concern still remains on-street parking. I didn't see, is there anywhere where it addresses the on-street parking?
Yes, the
Okay, good.
additional language here for parking standards found in Article 8 covers that you would not be allowed to park on the street.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. McGuire. I am wrong? Okay.
Can you restate the question?
My big concern still remains, as it did with CEDC, the on-street parking. I don't like on-street parking. I think it makes it really hard for emergency vehicles to get through. I don't think it looks good. That's not a standard that I think we should have.
Right, so currently, on-street parking is allowed for all our residential districts. So as long as you can accommodate the additional required additional parking space on your driveway or on your third drive, or that would meet the current requirements as presented.
Okay, so which on-street parking is a whole other issue I want to address, but not right here, obviously. But yeah, I'm just not a fan of it. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Felker.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Nassif, could you just, I think for the sake of just kind of walking through it again, go to the, yeah.
Oh,
there you
okay.
go. You're right there. So just mentally kind of walk through this. After, if these ordinances are approved as written, we're stating that ADUs can be allowed old downtown or lots that meet these zoning requirements, as long as we've matched the other requirements down the row here. If it's on another property, we have to have a PDP brought before us.
If it doesn't meet a certain size requirement for the lot, then it has to be a PDP before you.
And let's see, which is basically compared to some of the other municipalities, we're a bit more restrictive still.
Yes.
So we retain a little bit more control over those. Question, and I don't remember if we talked about this, and so let's just say someone does not abide by the ordinance, and what conversations have you had either with the other municipalities or internally about enforcement and how that process goes? So someone decides to, maybe just out of ignorance, someone's moved to town, they had ADUs where they moved from, and they started something. What does that process look like in terms of enforcement, or are there, and this may be just a general question, how ordinances are, I'm just kind of curious how we would deal with that.
So let's just say someone started building without getting a building permit, for instance.
Sure.
We would be notified, we would go out and have our neighborhood services team go out right away, check and see if there's work being done, confirm that there was no building permit, and treat that like any other property that might be building without a proper permit. Stop the work, talk to them, let them know permits required, get them in contact with us to start going through that process.
So I'll just throw out another scenario, and again, this doesn't necessarily get in the way of what we're doing, but in the event someone's already gone way past that and grandma's already living in a ADU that doesn't comply, perhaps we have some already. Is there a provision for grandfathering in existing units that may not comply with what we have here?
That's a great question too. So there, if we get word of someone and there's an ADU, and it turns out there was no permit, we would still investigate and check and see, where they are compliant with the code requirements. We certainly aren't going to, don't want to go out and make everybody start tearing down. So if you are already existing and you're permitted and such, you'd be allowed to remain.
Would you, okay. So those who may already be in place that do not have a permit, or may not, maybe say that again, what you just said. In the event they fall outside of these guidelines and already exist, there wouldn't be an effort to enforce anything against the homeowner.
No, because what you're talking about, if they already exist, we don't have development design standards now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so another kind of bigger picture question, and I think we talked just at the very beginning of our presentation about the comprehensive plan. This kind of goes back to something we talked about in CDC that I was just trying to get a better handle on. When we talked in CDC, we also talked about the target housing allocation, right? So back when we did the comprehensive plan, we were, I think statement then was that we were at about 74% single family, 15% in that middle range, and 10 or 11 multifamily. And then I've just seen different numbers, and so just kind of curious if you have some more feedback on that, because when we looked at the what was in the packet for CEDC had a very, very different number, and even some prior, I saw a prior CEDC presentation on housing, and what I'm trying to get at is, think about this, which I'm not opposed to this, and I think it's great information and grateful for the process we've gone through. Just trying to understand where this is helping us, okay, and making sure we have good data with where our housing is now. So I don't know if you have an update on that, if you can give us where we think we're at in terms of that mix of single family, call it what's in the middle, and then multifamily.
Sure. We are actually finishing combing through the data so that we can provide updated numbers from the end of the year, by the end of the year. And then we do plan on coming forward a later time with a bigger discussion on housing and where we are and where we stand, and housing opportunities and diversity to CEDC in the near future as well. I know that from what our data is showing us already, we have been building more in other categories, so that's why the residential 1 number, which is the single family number, started to go down slightly, just because efforts had been started to be focused in those other areas where we needed more housing. So, but it should have those numbers for you around the end of the year, around the holidays, before the holidays. Mm-hmm.
So we don't have numbers now. I guess that's where I think we can, what I've seen, the numbers for single family percentages, right, relative to the whole, were down, which was I think would be anticipated based on what's been built. But it was that, how we allocate between. Can you talk through that? Because what I was seeing, I saw numbers that said 5.5% were in the middle, 25.5% were on the multifamily, which was different than a couple months before, where it was 15 and 11. So can you just talk, like, you say combing through the data, but we've had some data points put out to us as committee members. So I'm trying to figure out why we don't have a better picture. Is it because we were fed incomplete or complete data, or why don't we have a better number set now?
No, we've just had a lot of cases come through zoning, building permits. We try to shift and move those numbers around with what's been approved, but what's been built or what's been zoned. So just getting through that information. And I apologize, I don't have all that with me tonight, because those are different kind of categories, and the ADUs don't fall in any of those 3. But what those 3 are, from the comprehensive plan, there's a dashboard, and it's residential 1, 2, and 3, which deals to the density of a lot. Residential 1 is your low density, traditional single family home. And then R2 was, I believe, like 2 family, duplex, things of that nature, more mid-density type. It'd be cluster developments would fit in there, small lot development for single family would probably fit in there as well. And then the high end, or the residential 3 categories, is where you capture your multifamily, your taller structures, your apartment complexes, things of that nature.
You would say this doesn't even fit into any of those 3 categories, is what you're...
We would still be collecting data, and following this and see how this goes. But this is like a different goal or implementation strategy from the comprehensive plan. It's slightly just outside of that box of the R1, 2, and 3.
Because the way we talked about it before, I thought we had talked in CEDC about this being kind of in the middle. Obviously not multifamily, not single family, but somehow being this other element. So maybe I'm misunderstanding or misremembering what we talked about.
Go ahead.
Sure. Josh Johnson, Director of Development Services. Councilmember Felker, I'm wondering if you're thinking of the small lot proposal we just came through with.
Right.
That would be more of that residential 2 category. And so from the comprehensive plan, the target was 65% R1, 20% R2, and 15% R3. As of 2022, we were like at 69.7 in that R1 category, and 5 and some change in the R2 category, and then, about 26.4% in the R3 category. And at the end of 23, as Deputy Director Nassif was talking about, we'll update those numbers as the year ends.
Okay. And you may be spot on with where my thinking is coming from, and perhaps I'm conflating some presentations. But still, perhaps part of our overall effort to try to address what housing will look like in the city. So thank you for that information. Thank you both.
All right, thank you. Ms. Nassif, what, I just got a couple questions. What, when you refer to short-term rental, can you define that for us so we know what that means?
Short-term rental is a different, it's basically like an Airbnb or vacation rental where it's meant for short visits. You know, it's not meant to establish residency or to be there for like longer than 30 days.
And so do we have we defined midterm rentals? Because there's a lot of that going on nowadays as well.
Would you say midterm rentals, I'm sorry?
Yeah. Midterm, that are more like 2 to 3 months.
We have not. That is not something we've gone into.
Like nurses and such do that kind of stuff. There's just something to look at going forward. And then let's go back to the Councilmember Pryor's questions about street parking. So when you say that you have to have access, you have to have that third car spot. Do you have at least standards in there that say that it has to be unimpeded or, I mean, accessible? I mean, you could have a long, skinny driveway and say, oh, there's 3 parking spots on this driveway, but that's not really realistic if you have an ADU in the back. It's not, I mean, because how would you time it so that you're always the last person, you know? So do you guys take those types of things into consideration?
We would definitely for a detached ADU, especially if there's going to be a detached one in the back, that you would have to access it.
So you just make sure that it's going to be accessible.
Yes.
The OFF street parking would be accessible in the design standards when you're approving it. Okay. And then I'm guessing too, just because you've been working on this for a year and a half, but you also, like Councilmember Felker said, we have ADUs in our community, so you've gone through this before. It's just you're setting some criteria up for us. Can you just elaborate just a little bit on line of sight? Is it a lot easier to approve one of these if it falls in the back? If you got, can you explain how what your approach on that?
You
line
know,
of sight and things of that nature.
Sure, we want to make sure that the bulk and the massing and the scale and such is compatible, and with the neighborhood. We don't want, we wouldn't want, of course, residents to be living next door if they're sitting lower or higher, like they're looking into that. So we have incorporated in setbacks as well, incorporating in that the ADU can't be taller than the principal structure, which we don't currently have now. We definitely would look at massing and seeing
What if it has a negative fall and the backyard goes uphill? Does it make it tougher to approve that because it would be taller than the house? If
it would be taller than the house then, yes.
So it would have to be a single level if they were to do that. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm trying to get at. And of course, all the drainage and such, that's very similar to any house that you would be approving that would be built, making sure that it drains appropriately and doesn't flood the neighbor's yard and all that good stuff. Okay. I think I'm good on my questions. At this point, I'm going to say, is there anyone that wishes to speak in favor or in opposition to this application? And please come forward. All right. Are there any additional questions from the council? Councilmember Shields.
Yeah, I do have one just about short-term rentals. So currently in the city, we have a requirement for short-term rentals to be either like on the same property or adjoining the property of the owner, so basically so that you have like oversight of it. So if we're not going to allow a short-term rental in an ADU, but you would allow the short-term rental if it was just a spare bedroom, or basically if it was everything, if it's an ADU and everything except it doesn't have a private entrance, or it's ADU and everything except it doesn't have a kitchen, then you could use it as a short-term rental, but as soon as you put that kitchen in, you can't anymore. I just want to make sure I understand how this kind of plays out.
Sure, you can still use your single-family residence as a short-term rental. If you build an ADU, a detached ADU, or convert your garage, the ADU structure cannot be used as a short-term rental.
Right, but imagine you have a house with a finished basement. You can use that as an ADU, right? But you put in a separate entrance and a kitchen, or I'm sorry, not an ADU, as a short-term rental, right? You have a finished basement, you use that as short-term rental. You can have an Airbnb in your finished basement.
Yes.
But you put in a separate entrance and a kitchen, now it's an ADU, and you can't use it as a short-term rental anymore?
You wouldn't be able to use the basement as a short-term rental.
That answers my question. Thank you.
That's a whole nother discussion. Yep. Okay. Then hearing no further testimony, I'm going to close the public hearing and reopen the regular session. Is there any council discussion on this application? Yes, Councilmember Shields.
So, you know, I'm glad that we're doing this. I'm glad that it's gone through the process and that we're kind of expanding these opportunities, because I know there are a lot of folks that this will be really helpful for, right? If you have an aging in-law that you want to be able to live on your property, or an aging kid who wants to, you know, stay home while they go to college. There's all kinds of things that this could be really useful for. Were it, you know, up to me drafting from scratch, we probably wouldn't have quite as many restrictions on them, but I respect the process. But I do take some issue with the short-term rental provisions. I think that it sort of unfairly restricts the use of the property, and I think it really limits the versatility that something like this has. So I have some neighbors down the street from me that they own a home, and they own the home next door to them, and they use it as an Airbnb within the regulations of the city of Lee Summit. But with that home, the Airbnb, sometimes for several months, they'll have a family member or a friend staying there. Sometimes they'll use it as an Airbnb. Sometimes they think, you know, maybe when the kids grow up, maybe one of the kids wants to move into it. And having that flexibility over time is really, really helpful for them. And I feel like if you're telling someone, you can build this ADU and your in-laws can move into it, but then down the road, if they're not living there anymore, you really limit it on what you can do with it. I feel like that's not beneficial. I think having that flexibility so that over time you can change who's using it, how you're using it, maybe sometimes you need to make a little bit of extra income. So I really feel like it would be a lot more beneficial to the people in our community to give them that flexibility, and I think that'll make it more feasible to build them, because then you know, well, if my relative doesn't need this forever, then I could Airbnb it later. And so I would really support striking the provisions prohibiting the short-term rental use. I'd be interested in any of my colleagues would be open to that.
And I'm assuming that you would also still stick with it being a residence, that the primary use of the residence?
Like owner-occupied requirements?
Yeah.
I would be open to flexibility on that too, but I feel like this is a healthy compromise. Like if you don't want to live there forever, okay, then sell it. But I feel like this, at least giving the short-term rental flexibility, allows someone the flexibility to have the primary owner staying in it over a long time, but using that accessory dwelling unit in different ways over time. So, like I say, if I was drafting this from scratch, I would go a lot more flexible, give people more leeway in how to build these and use them, but I think this is the one provision that I would really like to see changed that I think would make a big difference to how people can how feasible this is for them.
Okay. All right, thank you. Councilmember Pryor.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so I will just say, when I first saw the whole ADU proposal, I was completely against it, but I feel like Ms. Nassif did a great job of hearing our concerns and incorporating our concerns into this, and I think I'm for it now. I will say, just because the short-term rental thing was something that I was very much so against, when we were having these discussions was when Kansas City voted stricter policies against their short-term rentals, was when Overland Park had seen an increase in crime in their short-term rentals. And so I do feel like short-term rentals, if we look at other cities, they've not been successful with them. And I don't feel like we need to go down that same road and make the same mistakes when they've done it before us, it's not worked, and we need to learn from their mistakes and incorporate that within our city. And I feel like as it's written, or as we were presented right now, I feel like that does that. So, yeah, thank you, Ms. Nassif. I feel like you did a good job, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Lopez.
Thank you, Mayor. So since the question was asked, and just to give my perspective, I think the short-term rentals in this scenario, it's kind of a different discussion. I appreciate Ms. Nassif's presentation and staff, all the work, and the CEDC and Planning Commission. And I agree with Councilmember Pryor's comment that it has not been handled very well in Kansas City. That's kind of been profiled the most. So I don't want to get into a different topic, open a different can of worms at this point for our community, and just kind of take this as a separate issue, or as a separate topic as it relates to short-term rentals. So I'd be okay with the resolution as it's written. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Felker.
Thank you, Mayor. Similarly, I would say that I'm open to the conversation. I think that the idea and the thought process of Councilmember Shields is something worth discussing and making sure we really do have a sound conversation about it. I think in this context, I would be in favor of moving forward with the ordinance as it's drafted, and then perhaps we have this conversation about short-term rentals, and are there parameters that would make sense? Are there other things we can learn from other municipalities, and work that through perhaps in CEDC and bring it back to council? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember DeMoro.
Thank you, Mayor. I also would be in favor of the presentation or the ordinance as presented. The one, I will add comment though, the one thing that would be a big drawback converting ADUs or allowing ADUs to be used as short-term rental is parking. I think you open up another difficult situation with parking if it turned into. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I appreciate that I don't have consensus for my viewpoint. I don't necessarily think this needs to go back to CEDC because we already had, as council, a big discussion about short-term rentals and already put a bunch of regulations in place several years ago about requiring the owner to live on site and different things. So I don't know that we need to revisit that. I just felt like if you're allowed to own the house next door on a different lot and use it as a short-term rental, I don't see why you shouldn't be able to have the accessory house on your own lot. But if that's the will of the council, that's fine, but I don't see any reason to send it to committee or anything. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So the positive about all this is, hopefully this is accurate, and I need some confirmation from staff, is that by putting this in place, you're going to be able to make more consistent decisions and not be on the spot as far as what you might do for one person that's building an ADU versus another, and it's not as subjective. You've got some standards to go by at this point, and so they do help staff and they do help guide you as far as dealing with citizens and such. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. because it is more restrictive, like Councilmember Shields is saying, but we need some standards at this point, especially with our thriving downtown and there's other places in the community and such. So hopefully this will help staff. It sounds like we've got support up here. So thanks for all the hard work. I think it's 1.5 years you say you've been working on this, but I think you've been working on this for a long time. Is that true? Yeah, I thought so. Okay. Just more formally start working on it 1.5 years. Yeah. Okay. Then seeing no further questions or comments, who gets this one? Councilmember Hodges, would you please read bill number 23-236?
I advance to second reading bill number 23-236, an ordinance amending chapter 33 of the Lee Summit Code of Ordinances, Article 6 pertaining to use standards and Article 15 pertaining to rules of interpretation and definitions, City of Lee Summit applicant.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading bill number 23-236 by Councilmember Hodges, seconded by Councilmember DeMoro. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 7-0. Thank you, everybody. And that will take us to public comments. I have public comments, yes. All right. Yes, Ms. Vollenweider, would you please come forward?
It'll be the ordinance, site plan, certificate of survey. Teresa Vollenweider, 5201 Northeast Maybrook Road. I've done a lot of research on this and taken courses in surveying to learn more about that and gone back through the records and have found some things that are rather disturbing to me. I provided the ordinance that actually rezoned 5261 Northeast Maybrook Road from ag to residential large lot. And if you'll look at the legal description, that's right down here on the ordinance. You'll see that it ends with, except that part in roads. And I don't know if everybody understands what that means, but it's important. And you can Google that and find out exactly what that means. But basically, when you convey a property and you put in an exception, except that part in roads, you keep that. You say, I'm not conveying that, I'm keeping that. Now, part of my concern is when you go to the documents, the site plan being the first one, on that particular site plan that's included there, a right-of-way is not shown on that road. But yet, if you go to this site plan, you'll see that a right-of-way is shown on that road. But yet, there are no revisions. And on this one with the house, Matthew Schlitt's seal is not even on there. The seal with his signature and his date is not even there. And that document is being used when it's shown to you all to make decisions on properties. The next site plan has the seal, also does not have the road right-of-way. It's not there. And the date on that one is 1/23/2018. You can actually read that one. But again, no revisions. The little box up here that shows revisions, they're not there. Look at the document. There. I posted this on Facebook and asked my friends to tell me what they thought that date was. One of them, who was an attorney, came back and said, Teresa, I did a search and I looked for other seals of his, and I'd say that date is obfuscated. That's what he said to me. That's what he told me. No revisions. This to me is 2017. The other ones were dated 2018. No revisions. That's concerning. Say Susie versus Davis, the plan is merely a picture. Say is the substance that has meaning. All wrong. It's what they're on the ground, what's out on the ground that counts.
Ms. Fallenwater.
Surveyors are not always doing what they say they're doing.
All right, thank you for coming in tonight.
This is to be continued. Start a notebook.
Next, we have presentations. We've got a general update on new Longview TIF plan and future projects. Mr. Pearson's here.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and distinguished City Council. My name is Russell Pearson. I'm the owner of Box Devco Real Estate, and I live at 3152 Southwest Grandstand Circle in Lee Summit. And I was asked by staff to provide a presentation on the new Longview TIF and the Longview Farm TIF. It's a long story that dates back over 100 years, so I will not be able to cover all of that tonight. But I've chosen some milestones that I think are relevant for the TIF in general, and so I'm providing an abbreviated history of the project. And then I'll open up for questions. So the story starts over 100 years ago, and this is a map of Longview Farm, I believe shortly before it was constructed. And as many of you know, this is a historic farm that was designed to be the world's most beautiful farm. And a number of the structures remain. At the time it was constructed during the 18 months where they built over 50 buildings. It was the largest private construction project in the nation. It was built by R.A. Long, who was a lumber baron and wanted to build a farm for his daughter during the City Beautiful movement. So this is around the same time as Union Station and the World War I Memorial context. Over time, a number of the structures were torn down. There was a large annexation for Longview Lake, and some of the remaining historic structures exist today. And the tax increment financing plan that was put in place originally in the 2003 timeframe was intended to provide a revenue source to save those buildings. So this is an aerial from 2003, and am I speaking enough in the microphone? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we can hear you. Fine.
So this is the general outline that you'll see on the on the next slides, just for context. But this is the overall aerial of where New Longview was bordered by. And I could talk for a long time about this, but this was, at the moment, it was a David Gale concept, and he was a visionary, came up with an amazing plan for a traditional neighborhood development that ultimately became New Longview. And it was very forward-thinking. It was a great concept. And so this was one of the original plans. You can see the upper right corner is a different color shade. There was, in a complex project, it changes over time. So as a frame of reference, there's the original residence became the Longview Mansion. The original show horse arena became the Longview Farm Elementary School. There was traditional neighborhood development, single family, all of the various concepts. So it's a true mixed use, medium density project. The original Longview Farm TIF plan, and I'm sure all of you are aware, but I guess I'll just say it out loud for benefit. But normal tax increment financing plan freezes the tax base for what was typically land or an undeveloped building, and then when it's completed, the delta between those two is redirected. So instead of being paid to the taxing jurisdictions, it goes somewhere. And in a normal TIF, let's imagine someone was building a retail strip center or pick a project, but a normal TIF, that reimbursement is going back to the developer. In this case, this was, I believe, the first restoration TIF in Lee Summit, and it's unique in a number of ways, main one being the tax revenue from most of the generating areas is redirected to the historic buildings. So it's a true restoration concept. And these were the original project areas. It's been amended a number of times during the period of time. But ultimately, you have 10 years to activate the projects before they expire, and you can no longer activate. And then the reimbursement process lasts for 23 years from the activation date. So in 2003, these were the project areas that were planned, and then all of the blue areas are the uses that they were allowed to fund effectively. So sources and uses concept. The original plan is largely intact, but obviously has changed throughout the time period. It was a phased concept, and originally it was intended to be a gate system. So as certain phases were complete, then dollars would be unlocked for various projects. There was over 700,000 square feet of commercial planned at the time. And so for context, this was before Summit Fair and Summit Woods was created. So there was a large gap. It's called leakage in Lee Summit, where they didn't have a lot of they didn't have Target. We probably didn't have Best Buy, and all of those big box retailers didn't exist. And so a number of projects included those in their plans. And then time marched on, and I think as of 2013, there was about 70,000 square feet versus the 700,000 square feet. So the primary source for the restoration of these historic buildings never happened, in short. But this was just a little bit of a past history on what was planned. There were single-family, multifamily, office, retail, and so forth. There was a TDD that's also involved. Half of the TDD revenue, which is a 1% sales tax, goes to fund the TIF. It's one of the additional sources. And just in context, this is a map that shows the TDD boundary and the TIF boundary, and they don't line up exactly, and plans changed over time, but you can see that this was the area that those project areas covered. Major milestone was in 2013. There, following kind of the recession, there was a group called Mariner Real Estate that formed a fund and had an entity called M3 Longview LLC. They acquired a whole pool of loans, involved TARP and a bunch of other recession area things, and then ultimately foreclosed and took title to all of the undeveloped areas and several of the historic buildings. That was this function, or these were all the parcels that were involved in that transaction. This was around the time I got involved. I moved to the neighborhood in 2012 as a resident. I was a commercial broker, and this all happened in 2013. So I got involved as initially a leasing and sale agent for M3 Longview, who I knew through professional organizations. And part of that was working on helping save the remaining historic buildings because the project areas weren't developed. And so the source for saving the historic buildings didn't materialize, and it required a new TIF. So there's an original Longview Farm TIF, and then there was the new Longview TIF. So in 2015, the original TIF that had partially been activated was amended, and these are the parcels that were already activated at that time. And there was only so much revenue that was generated by that original TIF. It didn't reach its full potential. So the revenue that did remain was turned into what was called an interfund loan that allowed for, it'll probably be a complex explanation, and it's a funding mechanism that the city provides to use that revenue source that was in place to be able to put it to work today. So that wasn't enough dollars to complete the rest of the projects, but it was enough to do something. And so we had a number of projects that were split. So the mansion, for instance, and the lake and pergola rehabilitation were split between the Longview Farm TIF and partially paid out of funds that were made available immediately, and then partially repaid through the new Longview TIF, which was a pay-as-you-go TIF. And so these are all the project areas that were included. It was essentially everything else that, the project areas, taking the original intent of the first TIF and just reformatting it to the shapes of the parcels after design had moved forward to allow that increment to be captured into a pay-as-you-go formula. And it's got a waterfall system, so the funds that are made available through the activated project areas in the new Longview TIF pay in order as they're down the line. So the lower items are paid after the earlier items in waterfall. Another milestone in 2016, Sunflower acquired several of the remaining undeveloped historic buildings, namely the mansion, the barns, and then the farm office and dairy manager house. Then there was a CID created in the commercial area. It doesn't really involve the TIF directly. It's a 1% sales tax, but it does in the sense that it helps fund for commercial area improvements, and progress in the commercial area then funds the TIF for the historic buildings. So in a way, it is a funding tool that allows, ultimately at the end of the day, allows for earlier redevelopment of the remaining historic buildings. And then this is kind of out of timeline, but between 2019 and 2021, myself and a partner started acquiring property from M3 Longview. They basically came to me while I live adjacent to the residential. I still live in the residential neighborhood, and they said, "Do you want to just buy us out?" I'm summarizing quite a bit in that, But essentially, we acquired a couple of the commercial sites. The movie theater was my first solo development project as a developer, and then I became the developer of the neighborhood I live in, which is a fun and stressful at times thing, but it's a lot of fun. And so then in 2021, we acquired the remaining assets from M3 Longview, which included a transfer. So I'm currently the chairman of the New Longview CID and the New Longview TDD, and the declarant of the Commercial Owners Association and the New Longview Residential Community Association. I wear a few hats in this project. So as it currently stands today, the areas in red are the projects that have been activated, and I believe the townhome site is being activated or has already been activated, has been activated. So I think that's been done. And then the areas in green are the unactivated projects that we hope to have completed and be able to continue to fund. So this orange box on the side shows more or less where we are today. The $400,000 for the Longview Lake and Pergola has been reimbursed. The $1.4 million for the mansion has all but the last roughly $400,000 reimbursed. And that from there on, we're still on a pay-as-you-go basis. So there's funds for the farm office and dairy manager house and the barns and the mansion permanent structure. And then there's some contingency for various components of that. And then just a quick overview on upcoming planned projects. We've got, we call it Lot 44. It's the site right behind CVS. And we are starting a specialty market that my partner and I are forming. That is something we just wished was here for a long time and struggled to find the right users, so we're creating our own. It's the short version, and as well as the Lemon Cake Bakery. And so those are in design. I just got updated designs back yesterday, and we'll be submitting, had a pre-app already with the city. We'll be submitting those through and hope to have that open in the next year. And then we have an activity plaza as well, which it's a fancy term for a green space. So we have the same design team that was behind Serve in Overland Park. So it's similar in a lot of ways to elements from Chicken and Pickle, but not the actual pickleball, just the elements of that. And there's concepts from Iron District in North Kansas City and from Strang Hall. And so there's a variety of these similar outdoor concepts that we're using for our activity plaza that will be equine themed to play on the horse history of Longview. And that'll be fun. That likely requires, it's a reimbursable project through the CID was the original intent. And so we're working with staff right now on how to do that portion, bond issuance or some other form. That's something we're hoping to deliver in the next year as well. We're in design on that. And then the townhome project, we call it Village at New Longview, is a series of really, we looked at the best-in-class townhomes we could find throughout the country, and then we just decided to do them here. So they're four-sided. We use the same design standards that we apply to the single-family on the townhomes. So it's a missing middle product type. They're for sale, and got a series of brownstones and garden homes and row homes and bay homes and paired home villas. The first phase is under construction now and scheduled to be delivered second quarter of next year. First 24 units. And we hope to, it's roughly 20 unit phases for the next years until we're done. Got, some paired home villa project across the street. And then there's mentioned the farm office and dairy manager house. I believe there was a group looking at that recently. That is one of the remaining undeveloped historic properties, and it also is a generator. So there's a few of these that are both source and use. The rest of the area to the north is simply the source. That is the abridged version of the new Longview TIF. So I guess one more slide. So these are the areas that are not yet activated under the TIF. Technically, the entire townhome site is activated, but is still a future phase. So the green areas are the parcels that will be generating additional increment in the future once things are built and or activated there. Happy to answer any questions, and that's a lot.
All right.
So.
Coming in. Let me see what questions we have. Councilmember DeMauro.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Pearson, the lot 44, you mentioned that, and that sounds really, really nice. I just wondered are you doing the market yourself? Are you going to partner with a local company to actually do that market also?
We're partnering with a company. So originally this was going to be, we're actually opening 2 of them. And so we're working on a project in North Kansas City, and it's the owner of Cafe Europa. We were talking about opening a Cafe Europa. And we had him come out to our office in New Longview, and all the things he was talking about doing were very similar to the things we wished we had talked about doing in New Longview over beers. Just, wouldn't it be awesome if this thing happened, was here? So we kind of came to us that we happen to be living and working on a farm, and that has a very strong connection to food and produce and dairy. So the idea was to market, which was all about high quality specialty goods, specialty purveyor of fine goods kind of concept. And we would actually be able to open the New Longview location first. So this is a long story, but we were going to open this. This was a North Kansas City planned project that now we're going to open one in Lee Summit and North Kansas City. And the owner of Cafe Europa is launching the Lemon Cake Bakery next door, and he's our consultant for the market. So we're just a couple guys that are, we want to have cool stuff, and so that's what we're in it for. And he's the expert; he knows the business. Very similar model to what he's doing now.
And so the bakery will be a standalone; it won't be incorporated into the market.
Correct. It'll be separate tenant, different ownership, next door, and it'd be he'll probably produce some bread and products that will sell in the market, and there's an interaction there, but it is a separate function that he owns and runs. His wife's a baker, and then he's our consultant for the market concept.
And are you far enough along to discuss a timeline for all this? I think you said that you were meeting with Development Services on this. Is there a timeline that you can speak to?
Sure. So part of it is it relates to kind of back to the CID. Short answer is we hope to break ground early next year. And the goal would be to deliver it before the holidays of 2024. A lot of things between now and missing that window could occur. So we're planning on, at minimum, a January 1, 2025 timeframe. But if we can capture the holiday season and that's the, launch a specialty concept for the holidays, that'd be fantastic.
Well, I think that would be a great addition out there. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Felker.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Pearson, just want to say thank you for presenting this and giving us kind of a historical look at it. And like you said, there's a lot that's gone into this. I also want to say thank you for putting thought and care into what you do. And I think as we talk up here amongst ourselves about what we would like to see in Lee Summit, you kind of epitomize that drive for quality development. And so I just appreciate that, and thank you for that. Just one question on my part, and that is, you indicated that Sunshine purchased looks like the barns and another parcel as well on the or western side. Yep. So that is a completely, that you're not associated or affiliated with Sunshine, or is that?
No, Sunflower is
Sunflower,
a
I'm
developer out of downtown Kansas City. I worked closely with them on I was the leasing agent for M3 Longview, leasing and sale agent, who was the seller of these to Sunflower. But no, I'm not involved in the separate group.
But you do indicate on one of the last slides about future projects. Those are obviously ones that the two of the green areas there, the dairy barn and then residential, that would be there. They would play into those two areas.
Yes, those just are those are all of the components that are left over from the activated projects as well as the planned projects. So these are all the future projects, not necessarily our future projects, just future projects left over from the TIF.
And for those projects, we talked about this technical question in terms of like activating the TIF. These parcels, have we activated the TIF for each of these, or? Okay, thank you. Yeah, you have that there. Okay.
So I believe everything in red has been activated in the new Longview TIF, and everything in green has yet to be activated.
Except for that, is this the farmhouse that we did a couple weeks ago? That might be.
Did the farmhouse get activated?
We
did no. So the activation, I believe the only activation action this year that council has taken was the Village at New Longview townhome site.
That's correct. The activation of the TIF has not occurred yet. The preliminary development
We just did the PDP. Thank you. Okay. Yes, that's right. Okay.
And there is inside the TIF, there is additional restrictions for property transfers because of the importance of the historic buildings. So, in short, if they're one of the historic buildings, before they've received a certificate of occupancy and completion, or I forget the certificate of occupancy, until they're complete, they require council to approve any transfers of those assets aside from the list. And so I believe the list includes currently Sunflower and entities controlled by them, Box DevCo, and then the third one is now
Yep.
So that function exists. Same thing would occur on, in theory, the barns, last remaining undeveloped historic building. Council would get to approve any transfer, so provides some teeth. Then there's a facade easement that is granted at the end.
And again, because the TIF plan was revised in 2000, what year was it 2015? Is that the year that there was the update? So
yes, we're coming up on the end of the 10-year window.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're not out of the woods. Conceptually, a lot of progress has been made, and a lot has been done through this action from the 2015-2016 timeframe. But reality, and you can kind of see the parcels that are undeveloped at that time period, and then kind of where we are today. Additional revenue is flowing into the TIF, but it's drip feeding. It's a pay-as-you-go concept. And so it's a race against time. It's the stabilization, weatherization work that was done on the barns, for instance. You saw them before. You could put a cow through the roof. They were really, really in bad shape. And this was a 10-year kind of bridge. That was the intent, to try to buy time until enough revenue was there to be able to redevelop them. And there's a number of concepts that, I've had, and I know Sunflower's entertained, and those have the opportunity to be a really important and very cool project for Lee Summit. So it's been years of working to try and provide path to let those and other historic buildings be realistically salvaged and saved. Still working and will be for years to ensure that happens. There could be, we've got about 2.5 years, 3 years left of that window of activation. And effectively, the decision will come down when we're at the end of that 10 years. Does it make more sense to go ahead and activate all the remaining projects, all of these unactivated projects, and potentially have the increment window, slowly, instead of 23 full years, may only be, 19 years, and be done with it? Or is it worth doing another TIF amendment, would be the other function, which is a lot larger of a task. Or there's been concepts of, do we go back and look at doing another interfund loan similar to the 2015 timeframe? So there could be some creativity involved in how we approach this. In an ideal world, we would just build more stuff and it would generate the revenue automatically. But there is a break between the source and the use because they're not the same. So the commercial has to be, we're in a limited trade area. It's very cool, but we have high design standards and no public financing, effectively, aside from the CID. So it's a challenging, scenario that this project finds itself in, which means it's a little slower than we all prefer it to be. So we're working on it, and it will come with the market. But if that doesn't happen fast enough to say the historic buildings, then we approaching that decision in a couple of years, I'm sure.
Thank you for answering my questions and for the additional detail. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So the vision just keeps on going. And you're getting there bit by bit, year by year, and it's all high quality stuff. So we do appreciate that. And I'm glad you're on all those committees and heading on the different boards and such, so that we can keep moving forward. I'm sure that you'll come forward with the most viable solution as far as, the future activation and such. But we're really proud of this part of the community. So, Councilmember Hodges?
No, I just wanted to chime in and say that I think this is super cool what you're doing and able to reinvest in the actual community that you live in your neighborhood. So I love it. I love your vision, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. So thanks for investing in your community.
All right. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, sir. We have made it to proposed ordinances forwarded from committee. Councilmember Shields, would you please read Bill number 23-237?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for second reading, Bill number 23-237, an ordinance approving the award of RFQ number 2024-033 to Versa Governmental Strategies for Lobbyist Services and authorizing the execution of an agreement therefore in an amount not to exceed $60,000 for a term of 1 year with 2 additional 1-year renewals.
Thank you. We have a motion to move to second reading. Bill number 23-237 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember DeMoro. Discussion? Yes, Councilmember Felker.
Thank you, Mayor. And just a question, maybe, Mr. Head, as looks like we're engaging a new lobbyist firm, and just wanted your thoughts on what advantages you might see with this new firm relative to what we've experienced in the past. Do you see any different kinds of services that we might be receiving, or are we, kind of a similar type of package that we've had in the past?
I would say that, pardon me, this is a very similar type package to what we have had in the past. I do, however, think that the two individuals, principals of this firm, will be very active on our behalf. Our previous lobbyist he's retired, and he's shut down the firm at this point, so that wasn't even a possibility. We did go through our normal bid process. Fortunately, we only got the one bid. However, Mr. Pollock and Mr. Hensley at Versa, they had been hired sort of on a contract basis by Mr. Durham during the previous year to assist with some of the issues, and specifically are already very well versed in that issue. So we won't have them, coming online and then having to do a lot of learning, especially about that issue that I know is going to be a hot button issue again during this next legislative session. They are already well up to speed on that. So I think the activities will be similar, the types of activities, although I do think these active on our behalf than maybe we've had in the past.
Just for listening public's benefit, their services are going to be focused on state government in general. We're not hiring them to do any advocacy at a federal level, at county level, anything like that, in terms of other jurisdictions that have legislation that could affect us.
Correct. It's solely Jefferson City and state of Missouri.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, and yes, I've got to meet with them because they were contracted out and they're very engaged. So it should be a little bit different going forward. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. It moves to second reading unanimously. Councilmember Shields, would you please?
Thank you, Mayor. I now move for adoption of Bill number 23-237, an ordinance approving award of RFQ 2024-033 to Versa Governmental Strategies for lobbyist services and authorizing the execution of an agreement, therefore, in an amount not to exceed $60,000 for a term of 1 year with 2 additional 1-year renewals.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-237 by Councilmember Shields, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. I'll let Mayor Pro Tem Lopez take over for the next item on the agenda.
Glad to do so. Thank you, Mayor. This takes us to item number 9 on the agenda, proposed ordinances, first reading. I believe Councilmember Pryor, if you please could.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I move to advance to a second reading an ordinance approving a funding agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri, and 635 Holdings, LLC for the Shamrock Redevelopment Project.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Councilmember Pryor, and we have a second by Councilmember Falker. Do we have any discussion or questions? Seeing or hearing none, we'll call the vote. Recused. We have a tally. All right, so we have motion passes. Please record the vote. Thank you.
Did I take an agenda? Next on the agenda, I must have taken my agenda.
10A. Oh, no, I have it.
Oh, you took
You can
my
have it.
agenda. Yeah. Okay, next on the agenda is proposed ordinances. Proposed ordinances first reading. No, proposed ordinances second reading. Councilmember DeMoro, would you please read Bill number 23-222?
Thank you, Mayor. I move for adoption, Bill number 23-222, an ordinance approving a preliminary development plan for Chick-fil-A located at 690 Northwest Blue Parkway, all in accordance with provisions of Chapter 33, Unified Development Ordinance of the Code of Ordinances for the City of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt Bill number 23-222 by Councilmember DeMoro, seconded by Councilmember Hodges. Discussion? Seeing none, please cast your vote. All votes are in. Please record the vote. Passes 6-0 with 1 recusal. Thank you. And next, committee reports. We didn't keep you here all night, Mr. Pearson. We usually do. Councilmember Shields.
Mayor, we had a meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee yesterday, and one of our discussion topics was the salaries for elected officials, including council, mayor, and municipal judges. And it looks like probably next month we'll discuss an ordinance to amend those basically to adjust for inflation. and then that'll come to council for discussion as well. So just since that's, call it a medium-sized topic, not a huge topic, but I just wanted to kind of put it on everybody's radar. That'll be coming to us probably in a month or so. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other committee reports? All right, council comments? Yes, Councilmember Felker.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to kind of two things. One was discussion we had it may have been our last meeting, and I don't recall exactly when it was, but we talked about, we had an incentive project in front of us, and I had asked some questions about some of the data points, if you will, that we kind of worked through, and I can't say enough about all the work that staff does to kind of work through that and give us information that's just hugely helpful in kind of analyzing and trying to arrive to good decisions. I had a specific question about the part of when we provide pilots for certain incentives, we have often attached to that an escalator clause where, the amount that the applicant would then pay would be increased by 3% every other year following. And at the time, I just was, again, asking, are we setting the right number? Are we really kind of thinking through what is the right number? What is the increase in value of properties over time? Obviously there's the dynamic of how the county values property, and that being very dynamic in the sense that we don't always know what's happening. But I guess I'm just bringing this question up because we're going to see more incentive projects in the future. I mean, the idea in my mind is property values typically increase at some rate that may be greater than 3% every other year. Maybe there's more data out there that could influence or persuade me to think otherwise. And so I'm just wondering, as we think about incentives for future projects, if we can kind of look at that number and perhaps arrive at something different. Maybe 3% is the exact right number. Certainly I would think that developers probably don't want us to adjust that number to anything different than what we do. It gives them, number one, certainty as to what we might expect in the future. And I don't know any developer that really would necessarily negotiate against themselves in terms of what that, moving that number in an upward direction. Obviously, the reason I'm bringing it up is I'm thinking about our stewardship of taxpayer dollars, and we do provide incentives to help certain projects move forward, but do we build in the right kind of, again, in this case, the growth mechanism, the escalator clause that would reflect kind of where the actual value goes. And I think as we look back historically, obviously we've learned, and that's hopefully this be one other element of how we might learn and what we can do in the future. The Summit is clearly a place people want to be at. Again, this is just one example that we just saw as we've created many people over years have created a wonderful community to where both people want to live and businesses want to create their homes. So I think it's on us to make sure that as we do that, as we continue to provide incentives, that we think about whether the numbers we're using are the best bargain for taxpayers as well as the right place for where developers come in the door. So I just wanted to surface that. I'm not necessarily asking for discussion on it, but I didn't want to not mention it. I have a second thing, if you can give me just a little more time. Yep. I think I'm might be over my 5 minutes. But okay. Second thing, I feel this is appropriate mostly because of the content of what I'll say is all of us know that candidate filing is happening now and that it opened today. And I did not file. Now, I think I can say this because of what I'm about to say. But I did not file to run for a second term, and I don't intend to file within the timeline that we have. I think it's the day after Christmas. And I wanted to say this because, number one, it's a kind of a bittersweet decision for me. It's certainly something that I've thought and prayed and counseled with my wife Sarah about significantly, and it's what you might consider kind of a bittersweet decision. because I love the process. I really enjoy what we do here. I really have great respect for city staff, everything that you do, and you're willing to take my questions, which sometimes might make sense. Sometimes you're helping me try to understand some things. And I certainly have a great respect for everyone who sits here on the dais and the time we all take to do what we do. Disagree or when we agree, I think it's just a wonderful thing, and certainly respect the citizens who give us the opportunity to do this for them. So again, just wanted to share that publicly. I don't necessarily think I'm stepping away from the public square in general. I mean, I think someone who sits in our seats would have a hard time just stepping back and never engaging again. I think community service and opportunities to engage again in the public square are kind of part of how what I feel passionate about and care about a lot. So I still look forward to serving for the balance of this council term. There certainly are things I care deeply about, and look forward to continuing to serve with each of you here, with me on council, and certainly with city staff. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We're all going to be crying in a minute, but that's okay. I don't think anybody can top that, so they're not going to chime in afterwards, other than we all greatly respect you as well, Councilmember Felker. Staff roundtable.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few things. Councilmember Felker, thanks for mentioning the candidate filing that did open today for city council positions as well as municipal court judge, and that runs through the 26th, just kind of right up against the holidays. City Hall is closed on Christmas. We will have limited hours on the 26th, since that is the last day for filing. You can schedule appointments up to a certain time, and we'll honor those. But then from 4 to 5 on the 26th, we will be open for those any opportunities that folks may come in and cast their candidacy. Another topic: Ward Road improvements between Blue Parkway and O'Brien. So think of where Westview Elementary is, that section of Ward Road. On December 14th, there'll be a public meeting, an in-person public meeting here at City Hall in the Struther conference room between 4:30 and 6:30 to view those plans, ask questions, offer comments on those plans. And just like we've done for other similar projects, we're offering an online public meeting option where you can view the same plans and offer questions, comments online between December 14th through January 14th. So that opportunity is there for that improvement project. Circling back on the Missouri State Highway Patrol, groundbreaking was a great event, and I learned something in talking with Colonel Olson and Major Shipers from the Highway Patrol, is that we had originally thought with the governor line item vetoing some amount of money from that appropriation from the headquarters, new headquarters, that we didn't think the firing range, the shooting range, was going to be able to be accommodated, but it is. The full project is going forward. After the bids came in, they've found a way to get the whole project done, so we're very excited about that. Wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And last thing, so this Friday at 8:30, we will be getting as many of the organization team together to hold what we call our all-hands meeting. That's where, towards the end of the year, we celebrate all of our successes as an organization, recognize employees of the year and a team of the year, and so that's taking place this Friday. I did send you an email on that. You all are more than welcome to attend and would welcome that. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That would be the end of our meeting. It is. This meeting is closed at 7:54, adjourned.